credit toward your degree?
Some of them.
And who are your correct required classes? And then it's never be like,
Yeah, so I was like, yeah. I was like, it's just 4 years since you're already like.
I did my.
That's all.
Well, he went and talked to the counselor and they were like, well, we kind of reserve that for the like CPA route. Because we have to take so many more credits than one. I was like, don't go by what they say, do what you want. Start recording. The system.
Just
Yeah.
do the class.
Yeah. Because I mean, I kind of made my apologies, like, I was like, okay, I'm just.
People doing on people's stuff. So is this the original?
Good evening, everybody. It's 5:30. I'll open up the planning commission, their meeting for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Can I get a roll call, please?
Ms. Proper.
Here.
Mr. Giller. Here. Mr. Lees.
Here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Guerra.
Here.
Ms. Gort.
Here.
Mr. Frechter.
Here. Thank you, Chris. There we go. Any changes to the minutes from the previous meeting, commissioners? Mark,
No change.
any changes? All right. Minutes will be approved as they are. And Chris, any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes tonight.
All right, thank you. I'm going to open the meeting to public comment on historic preservation issues that are not on the agenda this evening. As part of a certified local government, we are asked to take public comment on historic preservation issues in the community. With that, I will open the meeting to any public comment. Please raise your hand with the icon at the bottom of your screen or press *9 if you are attending the meeting by phone, and then *6 to unmute yourself. Anybody out there
Online.
in the audience wish to make comments on historic preservation? Yeah, please.
Good evening to the members of the Breckenridge Planning Commission, to members of the community, to people on the computer. Thank you for allowing community voices to be heard. My name is Elaine Walton. I live in the Weisshorn neighborhood, which has recently been noticed that there are some building restriction regulations that have been proposed. The Breckenridge is very rich in resources. We all know that. But besides the obvious, there's another resource that we often overlook, and that is one that generates a lot of revenue, has a minimum impact on our services. That is the second home ownership. And for those who own a second home here, the tax revenue generated is remarkable, and the impact on schools and services is minimal. I was once a second home owner. Now I'm a full-time resident. I'm here tonight in response to the proposed building restrictions for the Weisshorn neighborhood. I wondered why this particular set of regulations was occurring now. I can only surmise due to larger, newer homes, comparable to larger, newer homes throughout all of Breckenridge neighborhoods, that someone has a problem looking at houses that may be bigger than theirs, which is a problem that goes back to the beginning of time. In fact, I question, is this a reason to prevent the evolution of development? I love someone who has the idea of building a big, beautiful home. That means they have a big, beautiful wallet. That means they have big, beautiful dollars that go into the Breckenridge Treasury in their taxes, and there's a minimal impact on the services. Those are reasons enough to think twice before enacting the proposed restrictions. It's just not lost revenue, but the overarching reason to reject this proposal of the building restrictions is that it is discriminatory, which exposes potential litigation problem. Either apply these restrictions from Warriors Mark to Peak 8 to Highland, Breckenridge, all throughout Breckenridge, because if these standards are so great, if you need to apply them in a non-discriminatory manner, not just in the Weisshorn neighborhood. And if you think my voice is a pushback when you make it non-discriminatory, I think you'll hear from a lot of people, a lot of voters and a lot of property owners who would not agree with it. So the plans that I have seen or have heard of will not generate the revenue. It will unduly punish and reduce the value of existing properties. And that's not a good idea. The thing about legislating is to be for the good of the community rather than one individual that feels that they don't want to look at someone else's big house because it's bigger than theirs. The historical aspect of that neighborhood is in the 70s. And when I called about light fixtures that were installed in the 70s and was told I have to take them out because they're not dark, even though they're not working, they're making, there's two sets of rules. What's historic, what's not historic? What are these restrictions you're doing and what are the impacts of those? And that's what I ask as a person who lives here, as a person who votes here, as a person who would like to see the community go forward and not be restricted. Thanks for your time. Have a nice night.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other public comments on historical issues? No? We'll close that part of the meeting and move on to final hearing. Final hearing on the Village of Breckenridge Master Sign Plan, PL 2024-0507. Chris or
Cliff.
Cliff?
For the record, Cliff Cross, Planner 2. So good evening, Commission. Tonight, I do have the final Village at Breckenridge Master Sign Plan hearing here for you tonight. Just to quickly kind of review everything, it is basically a amendment to an existing master sign plan, just making it a little bit more comprehensive and adding additional wayfinding and directional signage for guests and residents in the area. This application does include two variance requests, one for the freestanding signs. The second one is going to be for gateway entrance monuments. What has changed since our last hearing at the last Planning Commission meeting, due to commissioner feedback, the banner sign request has been removed, as Nathan talked about during the hearing. No additional changes have been made to the application. So just to quickly go over it, two variance requests that we're looking for, final approval. At the last meeting, y'all both preliminarily approved the freestanding variance or freestanding signage variance, as well as the gateway entrance monument. So for variance 1, they're proposing 3 additional freestanding signs. Typically, the code says no more than 1 per parcel. We believe, or staff believes, that this is a good addition to the property, just considering the complexity and size of the development. The second variance is going to be the gateway entrance monument. So this is policy 47, not typically within our sign code, but this basically allows them to put 2 additional kind of archways around the development. At this time, the design is conceptual. So it's really just giving them the freedom for the height limitation, and if they do decide to do an archway. Staff has added a condition to the application that any sign installation is required to have a Class D minor approval, and staff will review those administratively. So tonight, staff recommends approval of the master sign plan amendment and variance requests. There are no points assigned to the project, so I'm definitely here for any questions or comments that you have.
Thank you, Cliff.
Mhm.
Any questions, commissioner questions for Cliff? Mike?
No.
Mark?
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
No questions.
I have no questions either. Does the applicant wish to make a presentation tonight? Okay. Then there will be no questions for the applicant. I guess we will vote on it, huh?
Still come up, ask us if we have questions for the.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any comments?
Questions for the applicant. And then comments. No questions for the applicant.
Want to come over and sit here?
At all. No applications allowed.
Any questions for the applicant? Mike,
No thanks.
Mark,
No.
Susan,
No.
Matt?
No.
Alan? No. Okay. Then we will put it up for, well, no?
Let's do a public comment.
Oh, sorry, guys.
We know where your head's
Not
at.
doing well tonight. Any public comments on,
A couple years to figure it out.
any public comments on the Village at Breck master signage?
Nothing online.
Thank you very much. Can I now go to a vote?
Commissioner comments,
Commissioner comments.
and I do have a comment.
Okay, Alan.
I just, based upon, last preliminary hearing discussion, I would support if the applicant wants to come back and with a separate application requesting a variance for banners for wayfinding. We issued a similar variance to Vail Resorts. And I think, seasonal wayfinding is very important for that area. So at least I would support that if you came with that application. I can't speak for my fellow commissioners.
Oh, are you done?
Yeah.
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
I have no questions or comments.
No comments.
I was not here for the preliminary last time,
Mhm.
so I'm kind of jumping into this. It looks like a good proposal for signage. I just wanted to make one comment, and I'm making this as an old person. Topography is an art form. And I encourage people not to lose track of the fact that it is an art form. It's always been an art form. And the advance of computers has allowed those young graphic designers who either don't have the training or don't have the sensibility about that art form to be able to manipulate topography in such a way that it probably looks good to them, but it's no longer an art form and it's a distortion. That's my comment.
Thank you, Mark. No comments? Okay. Moving on. Mike?
I make a motion.
Yes, you can make a motion.
I move approval of the Village of Breckenridge. Let me just go back to where it is. Oh, yeah. Master sign plan amendment and variance request PL 2024-0507. Are there attached findings and conditions?
No.
Yes, and the attached findings and conditions.
I second.
Great. Can we get a full count?
Sure. Ms. Gort,
Yes.
Ms. Proper,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Guerra,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Frechter,
Yes.
Mr. Geller.
Yes.
All right, thank you. We will move on to the preliminary hearing for the Imperial Hotel BGV Parcel 4, 1599 Ski Hill Road, PL 2024-0475. And I believe Sarah will be presenting this for us tonight.
Just 1 minute to trading places.
Good evening, everyone, Chair and Commissioners. Thank you. I'm Sarah Crump, planner for the town. And tonight we have the second preliminary hearing for the Breckenridge Grand Vacations Imperial Hotel and Private Residences. The first preliminary hearing was held January 7th of this year, and they are back with a refined design and more information about the application. There are a couple of the applicant members online, so I'll just give them a second to be promoted to a panelist in case they need to talk later. So for tonight's hearing, I want to first discuss some of the consensus points that were reached at the first preliminary hearing, as well as the changes that have been made since between now and then. And then we'll go over how those affect the code analysis, as well as when the project's compared to the development agreement and the master plan. And then we have questions for the commission at the end. And there'll be opportunity for public comment. Public comment at the end as well. Starting out to address some changes in the density, there have been changes to the overall floor plans, just slight adjustments for each of the different uses. And so those are reflected in the new amounts on this page. And I also want to address a commissioner question from the last hearing, which was regarding the allocated density to the different uses. Those total SFEs are 220 and the application does not exceed that amount. The master plan does allow for flexibility among each of the uses, and this is stated in the master plan. So I apologize at the last hearing that wasn't clear to me off the top of my head. It is a footnote in one of the tables in the master plan. So just clarifying that any of those uses are flexible. The master plan states suggested SFEs for each use. So any of those could be applied to any other use as well. Again, the total SFEs contemplated here are less than the 220 allowed. So the last preliminary hearing, the commission agreed on a few items. The first being that there should be a variance granted for the Cucumber Gulch Preserve preventative maintenance area and the drainage and water retention upgrades that need to be completed in that area, as is customary with some of the other developments that have happened on Peak 7 and Peak 8. You also, as a body, agreed that the proposed architecture and overall style do meet the master plan's requirements for a transitional mountain style between quoting rustic and contemporary. The majority of the commission reached an agreement that the modified employee generation rates are acceptable, and those have been applied in this application here. All of those that were requested were agreed upon except for the marketplace retail. So that will be defaulting to the older code generation rate for that use. You also agreed that the exclusive programming area for the Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center, approximately 1,600 square feet, and their use of the outdoor aquatic area will be eligible for positive 4 points. And then finally, most of the commissioners agreed that installation of the weather monitoring system, the Davis Vantage Pro 2, was eligible for positive 4 points, pending some more information from the town sustainability manager, and we'll discuss that specifically a little later on. Since the first preliminary hearing, the applicant has changed about, I would say, 3 different categories of items. So they adjusted interior square footages for each use. They did add an additional condo unit, a whole ownership condo was added, and thus an additional lock-off was also added. And the second category of items was they provided a lot of the requested material information about with more specifics regarding applications throughout the project and for different uses such as railings, and also the exterior materials like siding, accent roofing, and their stone selections. And then finally, they made a lot of refinements to the outdoor programming areas and the amenity spaces. And so we can see those specifics as well. jumping right into the architectural elements that are being proposed. They have an updated material board. They are proposing fiber cement vertical siding, and this will be in a lighter range of natural wood tones. They're also proposing architectural asphalt shingles, as well as some roofs will have a corrugated metal accent. Then some portions of the siding will be accented with the corrugated metal as well. They've chosen a dark gray stone color for the base stone as well as accent. And another accent material on the siding, a western red cedar. That'll be a secondary siding. Staff doesn't have any issues with any of the proposed exterior materials. These all meet policy 5 of the development code, and do complement the between rustic and contemporary architecture, we believe. But you will have an opportunity to comment if you have specific thoughts on that. One architectural element that we want to draw your attention to that's newly proposed with this application for the second preliminary is the addition of some glass amenity structures. You can kind of see them here. Proposed they'll be tucked behind the townhomes, the front row. You'll probably be able to see 1 or 2 of these structures from Ski Hill Road, looking to the east there. One structure, the largest of the 3, is proposed to be approximately 16 feet in height and will have a heated spa on the interior. All of them will be enclosable, heated space. They're counted as density in this new application and considered a guest amenity.
Being a hot tub.
The spa being a hot tub, correct. And so the exact dimensions of these is not specified on the plans just yet. And the materiality of the joints between the glass panels hasn't been completely defined. We wanted to get your opinion on the potential for an all-glass structure before it goes to further refinement of design. An all-glass structure is not typical that we would see in Breckenridge, but I want to point out that in the context of the overall development that is mostly stone and natural wood or natural wood look, it may not be, it may still fit in this context when it's surrounded by those materials. So we'll ask a question at the end, your concerns regarding the all glass materiality of those amenity structures. And you can see they're proposed on the site plan here in the central courtyard, kind of tucked behind these front row of townhomes. More information was provided regarding the retaining wall structures and what those will be covered with. The majority of the retaining wall structures will have the same stone veneer as the overall building. And except for, I want to point out this rear shoring wall. This is more of a structural wall, and it will be this faux stone material carved to look like natural stone. Policy 7 was waived by the development agreement, so the opportunity to assign negative points for retaining walls is not available here, but I just wanted to bring your attention to the various stone veneer that is being proposed. Another commissioner comment from previous hearing was that the applicant needs to delineate the spaces specifically dedicated to the Breckenridge Outdoor Education Center. Those are shown here. They're van accessible spaces, and they will be directly accessible to the BOEC space and have access to an elevator that leads to the on-snow activities.
I'm sorry, Sarah, I missed the first part of what you said.
A previous commissioner comment from the first hearing was that those spaces need to be shown on the site plan since they are directly talked about in the development agreement. And so they've refined the application for the second level of parking to show those spaces are.
Thank you.
Are shown.
I have a question about how they get from there to the ski slope area. It looks like there's like a ramp, but you say there's an elevator and I couldn't figure that out.
I'll let the applicant speak to that, but I think this is an elevator here, the X. So you would go inside, hop on the elevator, go up to the snow level, and then you would be able to walk out to the ramp leading to the on snow activities.
So it's not a bridge over to that higher area.
Bridge.
Well, it seems like it's lower in the back with that wall and then you have to work your way up a slope. Anyway, we can talk about it later.
I think the elevator, well, maybe I pointed out the incorrect elevator. There's another one here that would lead out, and that's probably not the top level. But I'm happy to get into more specifics with that, and I think the applicant probably has a most conclusive answer for you. Since the first preliminary hearing, the applicant has introduced landscape numbers for the amount of trees that they would like to provide. This wasn't contemplated previously, but they are requesting positive 2 points. And I want to talk about the point analysis specifically in connection to the amount of trees. So other projects with a similar number of trees per acre have received positive 4 points in the past. And those include the Grand Colorado, as well as the gondola parking structure and our own project, the Alta Verde 2 apartment buildings. Each of those has a number of trees per acre ranging from 26 to 44. This project is proposing approximately 32 trees per acre. So within that range of projects that previously received positive 4 points, staff is recommending positive 2 points because they are removing a sizable amount of treed area along this eastern portion of the building between the existing neighborhood and the new proposed hotel. This area will be revegetated with substantial landscaping, but we don't feel it's appropriate to award those additional 2 landscaping points when they are removing that amount of trees. So positive 2 was the points that are recommended by staff. The updated density and use calculations for square footage did revise the employee generation table. That updated number is 203 approximate employees generated. And the applicant will continue to provide the employee housing on the Entrada parcel. At this point, they're well below the amount of square footage that's needed for employee housing generated by this use. And they'll be providing more than that on Entrada. So we don't have any concerns about the updated employee generation. Moving on to policy 33. Some updated information about energy conservation. The applicant has proposed that they would add 2 additional EV chargers in excess of the required amount for commercial. So for the same number of parking spaces, they must provide 2 EV chargers on site, as well as provide 20% spaces with EV capability. So they want to do 2 additional chargers for a total of 4. At this preliminary review, staff is supportive of that, and it doesn't conflict with any of the changes that are happening right now, potentially with the code talks in the council chambers about removing that possibility of 4 points for single family homes, since this is a commercial structure. So staff is supportive of positive 2 for the additional EV chargers. Between the first hearing and this one, we did forward information regarding the weather monitoring station to the town sustainability manager. She had the opportunity to review those specifics for this application, and she does agree that positive 4 points is warranted. She finds the system to be extremely efficient, and because it will be applied to such a large area, square footage of heated paving, that the 4 points maximum is recommended. The applicant's now showing some additional information about fences and gates and railings that were not included in the first packet. They're showing mostly metal or aluminum railings that will have a mesh metal insert. I was out skiing this weekend and I noticed these are very similar railings and banisters as what's now on the Grand Colorado Hotel. So a similar design with a mesh insert, metal material and a brown powder coating. There are particular fences proposed for different uses. We have 3 different ones: the pool fence, the ski area barrier fence, and a dog fence. Staff has reviewed the pool fence, which will be really similar in design to the railings, and the ski barrier fence, which we talked about last time. That'll be approximately 6 feet tall with a 4-foot metal on top of 2 feet of retaining wall. And that's just going to be along here to prevent guests from skiing potentially over into this plaza area, since the grade change is very considerable here compared to other plaza areas that meet up with the snow in this on Peak 8. Staff doesn't have any issues with the ski area barrier fence or the pool fence, finds those both meet policy 47. We do have a request that you consider a variance for the pet fence. Staff has looked at that policy in language, and we believe that that was probably written to apply to single family homes. It's very limiting in size. The pet fencing language restricts those areas to 400 square feet and only 54 inches tall. Whereas this would be a commercial kennel use and you'd have multiple pets using the area, and the potential for limiting the potential for those pets to leave the area, making a little higher fence, as well as a larger area. So they're proposing this 5-foot tall metal framed fence with vertical pickets. It meets the solid to void ratio of the fence guidelines, but it would be around an area of about 2,000 square feet, and the height exceeds what's allowed in the code. So we'll be asking if the commission has concerns about granting a variance or supports granting a variance rather for this pet fence in a commercial use. And finally, tonight I want to discuss some more information that we do have about the construction phasing and the potential for temporary structures during construction, as well as some other items that were brought up in public comment. So they are proposing 3 phases from west to east, top to bottom. This is in line with some of the phasing that was allowed for previous projects like the Grand Colorado Hotel. So they would start on this lower level and build up this parking area to allow for construction parking through the other phases. And again, phases 1 through 3, and finishing up with the townhomes here on the south. During construction, they would provide some temporary structures for both construction offices as well as temporary offices for Vail Resorts employees, and those would be located in this area. And they would be required to be removed within a time period of tight I think it's 60 days per the development agreement upon receiving a CO for the entire project. You may have read some of the public comments regarding the shoring tieback. So I want to point out that the town attorney has reviewed the language found in this easement. It's an easement that was granted from Lot 4 to One Ski Hill Place during its construction, and their shoring tieback foundational supports. The current applicant is doing more research on this easement and requests some additional time to research exactly what's there and proposed. But the town attorney does believe that this is a non-exclusive easement granted to One Ski Hill Place. So that means they can only use it for those shoring tiebacks. But this current applicant is not limited in the use of the easement area, and they could place improvements on top of that, including landscaping. Right now they have proposed drainage infrastructure as well as some walkways and retaining walls, and that would be acceptable per the language of the easement.
I'm confused about that. Generally, tiebacks are granted easements because they cross the property line. So are you saying that this applicant would not have that ability to cross the property line with the tieback? What are you saying?
The tieback easement was an easement that was granted to One Ski Hill Place, so it's already constructed. So the
The
current,
question is, are they going to get an easement for their tiebacks?
they're not proposing one at this time.
Thank you.
And you can see that delineated here on the plans. And here on the existing. So to summarize the point analysis as it stands at this time, the project is passing with a staff recommended point analysis of positive 3 points. We didn't discuss each of these in detail today because they were enumerated previously, but we have -10 for the overall building height under policy 6, -1 for an unbroken ridgeline greater than 50 feet in length, also under policy 6, -9 for greater than 5,000 square feet of heated paving under policy 33, as well as -3 also under policy 33 for 1,148 square feet of outdoor pools and spas. That's a total negative amount of -23. And they're receiving positive 26 total points, 1 under policy 15 for the refuge and storage that's integrated into, refuse, so trash collection, integrated into the primary building. They're also gaining 3 positive points recommended for the policy 16 skier and pedestrian access easement. Positive 4 under policy 18 for all the required parking being underground. Positive 2 for the loading area that's separated from guests and also underground under policy 19. I recommended positive 2 under landscaping with policy 22, and positive 4 for the BOEC space under policy 24. Positive 4 for a dedicated all-electric shuttle system under policy 25. Positive 4 for energy conservation and the recommended weather monitoring system under policy 33. And positive 2 for the additional EV charging stations under policy 3. Again, that's a total of positive 26, and doing the math, positive 3 for the project. So we do have questions for the commission. Thank you for your time. I hope I wasn't speaking too quickly for you, but happy to answer any questions that you might have about these changes.
Thank you, Sarah. Great presentation as always. We'll move on to planning commissioner questions for staff. Alan, would you like to start us off with any questions for staff?
Nice summary, Sarah. I want to go back for the sake of the letter we got from the community about building height. And I know we addressed this last time, but just for clarity, so you say your report from January 7th, it said that the master plan allowed for 5 stories and 62 feet per LUD 39 and the master plan. So there are parts of this building that are more than 5 stories. So was that an absolute or?
It was not an absolute. They are getting 10 negative points for exceeding that height.
Okay, the height, but the number of stories is not, it's not, that's not a relative or absolute requirement of the master plan?
It's a relative requirement of the
So the
master
10
plan.
points covers the additional stories and the height over the 62 feet.
Correct.
Okay, so, I actually went back and looked at the master plan amendment review submittal from May 2024, which is page 121 of this packet. I didn't see anything about that 62 feet or the 5 stories. The only thing I see in there about building height is that the building height cannot exceed that of a certain gable or peak on One Ski Hill Place, which this plan shows that this project does not exceed that height. I couldn't find any language about the 62 feet or
It's one of the subsections under height. It is in there, I promise.
okay.
C-
All right.
what page were you-
I just saw 8E, which only said that the height of this project cannot exceed the height of a certain peak of One Ski Hill Place, which it doesn't. I think one of the drawings here shows that.
It does not exceed so that was the absolute
That's
policy.
the absolute, is
Yeah.
it can exceed like 1,032 feet and 11 inches or something like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, I just wanted to bring that up for clarity to be able to address one of the comments that we got. Okay, thanks. So there's 2 separate issues. One, there's an absolute height. And then 2, there's a relative height of that this exceeds, of which there's a minus 10 points.
So it says relative policy 6. It's kind of the way the PDF printed. I apologize.
Okay,
It kind of cut out that
okay, I missed it. Okay,
section, but the relative policy 6 applies to this
Okay.
Building.
got it. Okay. So just for the sake of what our responsibility is here is that we have to follow what's in the development agreement and make sure that this application meets the requirements of the development agreement and then our own development code.
Correct.
Yep, okay, thank you.
And I do want to point out that the comments received indicate a way of measuring height that's not found in the development code.
Yeah.
We don't go by finished floor. We look at the established grade, in this case, per the master plan, and we're measuring from the gable height down to
Okay.
that established
Thank
grade.
you. I just wanted to clarify that for us and for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Elaine, any questions for Sarah?
I guess I have a question about the dog park fence as far as like snow. I was just Nordic skiing and going along the trail and the neighbors had a fence and like there was only a foot of the fence on top for the dogs to jump into their backyard. So I don't know.
So I think this one will be heated. Let's take a
I
look
don't
at
want all the neighborhood dogs to end up in.
Good point. I'm fairly certain this area is above some heated snow melt, so they shouldn't have that issue with snow buildup. And making the fence shorter than it actually is.
Okay.
Actually, it's not proposed to be heated.
And then you get the snow.
I'm assuming
in the
they'll be
dog
hand
park.
removing snow.
Makes it shorter too.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess maybe consider making it even taller. I don't know. I hate to be giving away stuff, but
Is there a height that you would
I don't know.
consider
It
to
seems
be?
like if you get 2 feet of snow, that's a pretty short, you have a 3-foot fence.
If I could jump in, I mean, Shannon might be able to answer this. What's the height of the fence at Carter Park,
Yeah, I was wondering.
you know, or?
Short. Oh, okay. That's all I have other than the BOEC access, but all.
Thank you. Matt?
I also had a question about the snow in the dog park. If it's gonna be removed, is that counted in the snowpack or just out of curiosity, in the snow stack calculations?
Perhaps that's a question for the applicant.
Perhaps, yeah. I'm not sure if it was addressed, not in already addressed, but
It's not shown as a hand shoveled area, so it probably isn't included in the calculations at this point, but question for the applicant.
okay. And maybe this is a question for the applicant, but I don't know if you've received anything regarding the tieback easement. Is there any engineering reports that indicate that the tiebacks for One Scale Place would not be compromised with any improvements made over them on this easement?
I'm gonna defer to the town engineer on that question, if she has a moment to answer. And is doing more research on this, and
Okay.
they have the original plans from One Skill Place to confirm that they're not gonna disrupt that.
We have not received any analysis regarding the existing tiebacks from the applicant.
Um, Thank you. I think that's all the questions I have. at this point.
Great, thank you. Susan, any questions for staff?
Yeah, Sarah, thank you very much for clarifying the density allocations. I was pretty confused about that the last time around, so I'm gonna leave that alone. As far as these glass geodesic domes, this seems to me to be something that's very different from what we've considered in the past. And I thought that there should be some analysis under policy 5 absolute as well as policy 5R. Because there is a little bit of language in policy 5 absolute about how metal exterior elements have to be painted and are not left as bare metal.
Mhm.
And it seems to me that allowing them to be, basically non-reflective metal is bare metal. And also the fact that, as you point out, glass is not a natural material.
So the non-reflective painted metal is allowed per the code.
Oh, so it would be painted.
Yeah,
Okay.
we would require that if the joints between the panels are metal. I spoke with the architect previous to this regarding the design of these, and they're just like not quite there yet. They wanted some feedback before they commit to the design. So they don't exactly know the material between each of the panels. It could be wood, it could be metal, maybe a combination. But if it was metal, we would require that it be non-reflective.
Yeah, okay, I didn't get that meant paint.
Yeah, I'll further add, I think it's really to be in the details. It's hard to evaluate until we see it. But there is limited precedent next door at One Skill Place. There is kind of a solarium, if you will, over their aquatics area that sticks out, and that's right adjacent to the kind of ski back down from Rips Ride. So there is limited precedent. That one admittedly isn't as visible from the front, but it is very prominent from the rear of the ski slope. So I think in the context of the overall building, we would probably evaluate it similarly to how that was evaluated during One Ski Hill Place, this construction.
Well, you anticipated my next question. It had to do with, what kind of precedent we have for something like this. But these are freestanding, not something that's coming out of a building. So apart from the one that's on the, covering the spa, the other two are just going to be seating areas? Is that?
Yeah, it looks like there's a proposed bench inside. You would be able to go in, it'd be heated space, like a hangout common area.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, well, I'll get into my comments about it later, but thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Mark, any questions for Sarah? Of course. Please.
Just circling back to Alan's starting comment, have all the issues that were raised by Mr. Himmelstein's letter been addressed? Not just the height, but he raised a number of issues. And how is that handled? Does the staff respond in writing to him?
We don't always respond in writing. The comments were provided to you, which was the request of the commenter. So they were forwarded to you to evaluate.
I'm just asking
There.
the question because I don't want him to feel he's being ignored. I want to hear that they've been dealt with and we don't have any concerns there.
Staff does not have concerns about the comments. I don't know if Chris wants to add
Thank you.
anything.
No, I think, he did bring the attention to the tiebacks. We did direct that to engineering as well as our legal team because we wanted to get an interpretation and also make the applicants aware that was being raised as a concern. So obviously we are, that's how we're addressing it, just to see exactly what, can be done. And admittedly, I've been out of the office for a little bit, so I know Sarah and Mark have run that through our legal team and gotten a response.
You mentioned a materials board. We're used to seeing one. Are we going to see one before the final? Where are we with that?
A physical materials board?
Yeah, as
Um,
opposed to the pictures on a printed piece of paper.
I think if the applicant would be accommodating to bring that in.
That's our normal procedure, so that's why I asked.
We don't always do physical boards, but for this large project, I think we can do that.
Yeah, I think it's appropriate.
Yep.
I have a comment on your write-up here. Under item history, at the end of the second paragraph, I suggest adding in that sentence right here at the top. After building, that would have been allowed, just to give further clarity to the sentence.
Okay.
And I want to interject, I believe that the discussion concerning the 4 points that the staff wants to give BGUV for the weather monitoring system proposed was not a closed issue. As a result of the consensus of the commissioners, I remember that Mr. Geller and I both objected, and that there was further discussion that would be advanced to the next meeting, which is this meeting. I just want to bring that up. And my other comment that I'm not even going to read addresses the material board. And then I have a question for you. I thought that we discussed when we had the town council summary some weeks ago that the policy of awarding positive points for EVs had been eliminated. Is that wrong?
Discussing that as a potential code amendment, but only in regards to single family residential. So for large commercial projects like this, they could still get points for EV chargers. And that's been the discussion to this point, is my knowledge.
So let me understand, in this particular application, the applicant would put in how many EV chargers as part of the process? Or are these two the only two that are going in that they're getting points for? I'm trying to
So,
understand that.
First, let me point out that this application was received and it has to be evaluated under the current code. So the current code says they are absolutely eligible for positive points if they provide an excess of EV chargers versus what's required. For the number of parking spaces they have now, they would be required to provide 2 EV chargers, and 20% of their spaces must be EV capable. And that's from the building code side of things, the energy code, that's different standards that the town adopted.
So
So they would need 2 in addition to the 2 they're required, so
those are
4.
4
Mhm.
for which they're going to get 2 points.
Correct.
Correct. Okay. Thank you. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Mike, any questions for Sarah?
Very nice work, Sarah. Just a couple of questions. With respect to the 3 geodesic domes, they're a curious accent. Do you know, did the applicant provide any alternatives or other mass or form?
So they do have some other hangout spaces that were proposed in the rear of the application that you saw previously, and those are still included. They're kind of like open air gondola structures, like bigger than an actual gondola cart, but an area where you could hang out and watch skiing or watch your kids at the pool or something, and they're in this approximate area. Let me scroll down to the, so those structures are here. So that's something that they contemplated previously. At the first preliminary hearing, I think this area was open with more of like a garden atmosphere and maybe a couple benches. They hadn't contemplated additional structures in the area.
Okay, thank you.
And so I understand, is that plan that we're looking at, are those in the elevation of the backyard of the townhouses, or are the townhouses above that space?
I think the deck of the townhomes, which is these areas here, kind of overlooks this is what I'm,
So it would be on
gathering.
a similar elevation.
let's see if it's very legible in the overall rendering.
A 3D model delivered to my house.
So like the top level deck would be approximately the same elevation as these structures.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the second question, you sort of rolled through it. The faux stone retaining walls, which are part of the composition of retaining walls and fences in the backside.
Mhm.
Is there any precedent for faux stone on a retaining wall in town?
I could not think of any when I was writing this, but I feel like I just don't know all the retaining walls.
Is this proposed to be faced with a faux stone
It's
or
a,
is it a CMU block?
yes, the second.
No, the first, faced with the faux stone. Sorry, sir.
It's like a concrete with, it'll have like a carved stone. It's not a fake stone applied to the product.
But
To
the-
my knowledge, it's already formed that way.
So is it stamped? Which we do have some precedent for
I
stamped.
think it's manufactured as a stamp. Yeah.
Probably part of the concrete forms mold.
Yeah, I'm not sure about, I'm trying to think of any applied to answer your question. I know we've used stamped concrete forms to mimic stone on certain retaining walls. And this is probably a little bit different because as Sarah mentioned, they did waive the provisions of 7R, which would usually controls the materiality of retaining walls. So you would have to look back, but there probably is some precedent where we did assign negative points for that type of application versus using natural stone, but with the waiver of 7R controlling materiality, it's probably a moot question.
Okay, I appreciate that. No further questions?
Thank you, Mike. My questions were pretty much covered by Alan, reiterating the building heights, and thank you for that, Alan. And I'd also like to reiterate the tieback easement. And obviously, we're going to get more information on that on the next hearing. But we sure would like to know what's there currently. And that's all my questions. Thank you. Sarah. It's on to the applicant presentation. Graham.
Hello, Graham Frank from Breckenridge Grand Vacations, applicant for parcel 4. Gonna a little bit mutt and Jeff it because Bill Campy couldn't make it up because I-70 closed. So Bill is online and I will let him handle more of the geodesic dome questions. If we want, would you rather start with that or we finish with that?
Let's finish with that.
Perfect. So as to the shoring easement, the Vail Resorts holds the rights to that shoring easement, which was a temporary shoring easement. I had the benefit of being involved in the One Ski Hill Place project. So I have a good understanding of what's in there and what's going on. And we are working with Vail right now to vacate that temporary shoring easement that was in place and to the benefit of Vail Resorts and its associated entities that are involved in the One Ski Hill Place project. So that is underway and obviously wouldn't do anything that would compromise any shoring system that it was there for permanent building systems. So hopefully that pacifies the concerns and we can bring you the evidence of that vacated easement for our next hearing. Second, Alan, to your question on the letter regarding building height, there was another question also from the last hearing. You'll remember Bill Anderson came to the meeting. We provided him renderings from his back deck as requested, and he was satisfied with those and the view corridor going through there. So hopefully that was addressed for Bill. In terms of the dog park fence, I think it's a very good question, right? We would maintain that by shoveling. There's a snow storage area shown at the end of the dog park, and I think we need to do a better job of denoting that blue on the plans, where we would shovel that too, obviously in the winter, shoveling it towards Ski Hill Road and creating that open space. I think we just missed adding in that blue storage there at the end of that deck. It would be right at the junction of that green in the corner there. Sarah, do you have a cursor you could throw? It would be right in that area. The blue would be right in that area at the end of the deck to keep that shoveled and open for the pets to use and have the associated fence there, so that they're not jumping over onto that heated walk, going down that egress walkway. On materiality, material boards were on their way up the hill with Bill, but unfortunately they didn't make it. So we will have them for you guys as we go through that. On the Davis weather stations, so a lot of back and forth has happened on this. I know Sarah worked with, I believe, Jesse Burley, is that correct? On what is being saved or addressed by those systems. So at Grand Colorado alone, Mike and Mark, more for you two, that system saved 39 metric tons of CO2 emissions just last year. So this is, I know there were some questions on the simplicity of the system. This is the most advanced on the market, doing wind, water, dew point, temperature, all of that going into effect, and then having a ramping curve to the heating. It is not just a simple on off. If it's wet, if it's cold, turn on, turn off. It's an actual ramping of the system and modulating that so that you are getting the maximum efficiency out of those boilers that are running the snow melt, i.e. just heating the ground enough to melt the snow versus overdoing it or underdoing it where you have ice. And so it's a very active, vibrant system that's out there and being used and implemented in more buildings. Just for you guys, some more data points that were in there outside of just saying it won the EPA, the associated EPA awards. To the general comments from the last meeting, I think what we did outside of the geodesic domes, one of the things we were trying to create there with the new code and the limitations on the amount of snow melt, trying to create outdoor experiences that people can still enjoy or go and use and make sense using without having snow melt in those areas. So the intentionality on that deck is for it to really feel like, if you will, a winter wonderland. And you are going down on snow shovel paths to get to those domes. In one of those domes, a hot tub, congregating spaces, but you're still going outside, but you're not, quote, in the elements, and you're enjoying it. So we're trying to activate some of those spaces while still staying inside the confines of the new energy code and the snow management, snow maintenance, and snow melt codes. That's what we were trying to do there. And Bill can talk to that and more where we've seen it in other applications. That was the impetus for putting it into this plan. I think from the last meeting, Susan, you had some questions on employee housing and where we were and how we were addressing those. I think Sarah's now addressed those in the report. Do you have any additional questions there?
No, actually, my questions had more to do with the density allocations.
Right.
And
Feeling good. Okay. So in all, what we have tried to do is with the textures we talked about with snow melt, snow maintenance, water runoff, all of those key items that we heard from you guys in the last meeting, we've tried to highlight and implement those in the plans that you're seeing now, while then taking into the associated constraints that were put in place by the development agreement and then the associated neighbor feedback. So with that, if Bill, you want to unmute and talk about the geodesic domes, then we can answer any other questions.
Yeah, thanks, Graham. Sorry I can't be there, guys. Bill Campy, D2J Design. We're the design team for the project. In regards to the domes, I think just to clarify on a couple points. One, I do not think they will be very visible, if visible at all, from the pedestrian level. If you were to look at the actual perspective renderings, I think there's only one, and it's the one that's on this cover page currently that you can see it from. And just note that you're, probably 50, 60 feet in, or maybe 30, 40 feet in the air with that view. So, we feel that these are kind of more in a private courtyard versus in a public environment in terms of kind of their impact to the street. Additionally, there'll be landscape and things that'll cut your view from this area as well if you're at the pedestrian level. We're happy to provide a additional rendering to kind of demonstrate that. And then secondarily, this is over part of the building. So this is a connected portion of the building. And as Graham said, we're really, looking at new ways to address, not just the code and some of the things, but actually amenitize these areas that can kind of be dark and leftover spaces in our projects. This is one of those areas that won't see a lot of sun, et cetera, but still want to give options for people to enjoy outdoor spaces. I think Graham did a great job of talking about kind of the experience could be more of a snow experience in the winter. And then it's in the shade in the summer even. So the idea of kind of creating these indoor spaces that feel outdoor and respecting, the trying to minimize giving away a lot of heat and energy to the outdoor environment as kind of indicated in the new direction the code has gone. We think this is a kind of a creative solution for that. In terms of what they look like, obviously, because we want them to feel like you're outdoors, they're going to be more of a transparent type environment. So, kind of minimizing the amount of material to make them feel like it's indoor space would be contrary to that whole concept. And we kind of like it as an inventive way to start to address these. And we think it'll be a really unique experience. And as Graham said, these have been built all over the world. And it's not too different from what Chris said in terms of what's happening at One Ski Hill. I think it's just a little more of an artful, kind of smaller, kind of, thoughtful experience versus kind of a large building that's kind of been created on the back of One Ski Hill that's actually quite visible. So happy to answer any questions about that. I think Graham did a great job of addressing a lot of the other concerns. We are absolutely have a full materials board ready to provide for final hearing. So they'll be able to look at that and it'll reflect what you're seeing here in terms of the materiality of the building. So happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
I think we missed one thing, and it is that access to the snow. Yep. And so Sarah, if you just show one level up from that plan you were showing, that BOEC elevator actually gives you, if you go up one level from there, you get direct access to where the restaurant patio is, and you flow right out to that corner on the snow, and it's ramped in right there. Sarah, I'm looking at page 77 of 226 on the plans.
Yeah, I'll add just the way this is designed is that you're going to have the elevator it actually won't have like a slope or ramp experience to the elevator. That it'll be, yeah, we're kind of bouncing around here, but you're going to be able to go into the elevator, then exit essentially at grade and walk directly, access directly onto the snow from there without any stairs or anything like that.
Oh, I see the stairs are to the right.
The stairs, those are exit stairs for the whole building, and then it's separated from the stairs that walk you down to the street from that side for emergency egress and things like that. So
You have
Yep.
two sets of walls pinching in there, one wall that's dropping down into the courtyard, and one wall that's bringing the staircase up, and it's between those that the access walks directly out to the snow level.
All right, thanks for clarifying that.
Place that it's illustrated, so if you can go to L105, you can see it with the two walls coming together. They're highlighted in orange.
So that's the grade level that comes out at that
Correct.
level of the building.
Yep.
And there's no slope to the, or is it gentle slope uphill?
It'll slope right up to that snow level.
Yeah, it's not a, my point
Like,
was it's not like
2
a,
to 4%.
yeah, yep.
Good. With good safety rails?
You shouldn't have to have them with that percentages feathering to the snow. But then you'll have railings on those 2 walls that are bisecting the space.
But the BOEC guests are never unaccompanied, so
Right.
they're always with the BOEC instructor that's helping them along, so they won't be using rails.
Yeah. Anyway, people can be more independent is always better, I think, though. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Bill.
I got question.
What you do? We'll move on to questions for
Bill?
the applicant. Mark.
One question for Bill. You still there?
Bill, you still there?
Yep. Go ahead,
Um,
sorry.
How are you gonna heat the geodesic domes? You're gonna use hydronic?
It'll be I mean, this building's not fully designed, but they will be heated. They're part of a building essentially, so they're not
Preliminary thought.
independent, like in the middle of a landscape. They'll actually have, they're gonna have to have HVAC like any internal space. So
I thought they had hot tubs in.
yep. So like for the spa, there'll have to be a certain amount of air movement to keep humidity low, those kinds of things. Yeah.
Bill, could you speak up or lean into the
I'm
mic?
not hearing anything you're saying, buddy.
Oh, really? Is this better?
Yes.
That's better, yeah.
Okay, I'm shouting right now, so I will do my best. But I just said that they will have a full MEP system. Like any, they're essentially an extension of the building. And so they'll be connected to our building systems, and they will have, for example, in the spa, enough airflow to minimize any type of condensation, all those kinds of things. We have built and designed these types of environments in other locations. So yep, they will be essentially part of the building. Could you guys hear that okay?
Yeah. What I'm hearing, Bill, is that you haven't figured it out yet, but I trust that you'll do it right.
Yeah, I mean, we're not fully engineered on all these buildings yet, but we know what we're planning as our approach. I mean, I could get in all kinds of detail. If you want more detail, I can tell you exactly how we're thinking about doing it, but I feel like that's probably more than anybody needs at a planning hearing.
Pretty simple question. I've got some questions for you.
Absolutely.
As I understand, it, we had some discussion about the faux stone. As I understand it, your current intention is to use all natural stone veneers with the exception of the retaining walls on your south and east perimeter borders of the property. Is that correct? Everything else is going to be natural stone veneers?
That's it. That is the intention. And when we talk about the shaped or geometric formed wall,
Mhm.
it would be the parallel that you would use if anyone has been to the top of the mountain where Vail Resorts did the climbing walls and they emulate natural stone. It is that same type of carving of the shotcrete by a company like Summit Geostructures out of Utah that create that look.
So they do the shotcrete on the cast concrete.
You're
retaining
exactly right.
wall
You got it. And
after
form
it's-
it,
after
form
it's
it and
stacked.
stain it with multiple levels of stain to get the striations.
You got that?
I'm looking at it.
All right. I'm confused about your circulation plan. And I'm confused as to frankly, why staff gave you 3 points for it. Because as I look at this plan that you have specifically, the one I looked at was on L100. I'm looking at the extensive amount of risers you have. Going up that one side, you've got 89 risers from Ski Hill Road up to the ski access. And I understand that probably not a lot of people are gonna make that hike up 89 risers. But I just point out that that's kind of excessive. And then you've got a row of risers, which appears to go from the patio where the Breckenridge Outdoor Education Area is. And there's 16 risers plus 15 risers plus 15 risers. Which by my calculation is 46 risers. That's a lot of steps. So, one of my questions is, how are you gonna get the people up from BOE there? And you don't have to answer that right now. I'd like to ask my other question, and maybe you can group them together. And then you've got 15 risers coming from the restaurant patio area and 8 risers from a little lower, which tells me that in reading the top of wall elevations, that's a ramp coming down there that someone can use when they don't want to use the stairs. And there's nothing in the International Building Code that speaks specifically to landings, but prudent design says that you should go 7 to 9 risers and then have a landing and then continue with your stairs. Because people get fatigued as they go up the stairs. They need to be able to stop, let other people pass, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it doesn't seem that, with the exception of the risers on the side where we have 46 of them, that anybody's taken that into consideration. And then I'm looking at this little narrow access up here in the corner to that area right above where Rip's Ride is. And I've walked that area several times. It's already very narrow there. And I'm just concerned how you're going to get skiers in this big building out through basically that funnel of the very small space. And I'm concerned as to why anybody on staff thought that was a good and reasonable improvement of access worthy of 3 points. And then my final question for you, Graham, is walk me through how you get the people from BOE who have handicaps up from that level, because if I look at the elevations, you're 23 feet from that patio area where it indicates that that's where BOE is, up to the snow level. 23 feet is a long ways to get people up the hill. And maybe I'm missing something, so help me to understand.
A lot of questions there, but I'll go for it. Sarah, can you go to L100? And can you zoom in on that upper corner? There you go. So to your first question, the people from the BOEC come out right into that patio area that is between those 2 walls and traverse directly to the snow, not on stairs, not on risers, directly to that snow. In terms of the
That's the slope, is it not?
yes, and it's 2 to 4%. If you keep zooming in on that plan, you can see the 2 to 4% feather that goes up to that snow.
So there's a door in that corner that we're not seeing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
It's
So that would address the BOEC, that would address pedestrian travel that didn't want to come out from the pool deck, out and up the stairs there, or up the ramp to this there.
So that's available to the public as well as the BOE.
Well, to the,
That will-
it's available to all of the occupants of the building.
Okay.
The general public, where I think we've really improved the scenario on that end of the site, and this goes back to the master planning process, it was of paramount importance to the public to provide a stairway to Ski Hill Road. And we looked at both sides of the building. One side was basically a road to nowhere along a retaining wall, very steep, bringing you up and turning into that easement between the 2 buildings out to the snow. But you had arrived at a point that you were going to continue across slope or upslope until you could put your skis on and go down to the lift. Through those meetings and the discussions with staff, we all thought that the better decision was to put it on the other side of the building where it exists today And then to break up that experience, because it's, as you know, an excessive slope. So to break up that experience with a couple of large landings that then get you up to the snow. That is how we addressed it. Yes, is it ideal? No, but we accomplished it and got it in over there. And for use, it is that use and that connectivity that doesn't exist today, right? Today, it's a giant hole and a giant wall that gets you up there. So that was through those meetings and that process, we worked to bring it around the other side of the building. Prior to Sarah's time, Chris was at the helm at that point, but that is where we landed as the best possible access. And then being able to break it up with a couple of landings coming up along the building there. That is how we provided what we thought was good access to the snow for anyone who didn't want to continue up Ski Hill Road and then take, I think it's 24 or 25 steps up to the current landing. So you could circumvent you could either have a longer walk and less stairs because you're gaining rise on up Ski Hill Road, or you could take this and put your skis on at the top of those stairs and ski down to the Colorado or the Rocky Mountain. So that's how we provided that access through the site, and then the elevators to traverse through the building and out to what we're calling the snow level as you continue up that ramp and get to the snow.
So an elevator brings you to that corner.
Correct.
Graham, I just want to, I'm sorry, I just want to jump in here. What you're describing is actually happening below the access. I know it's hard to track this, but you come out on the side on basically an elevated deck over that space that connects to that 2 to 4%. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Where you see that little notch, you come out on the side of the building and over, but it's still at that grade and it's out the elevator there. So there's no steps or anything affecting your access to the mountain from that elevator. I just wanted to make.
Bill thought it sounded better than what I said, but we said the same thing.
So
You understand the difficulty in us trying to understand that.
Absolutely.
Because it's just, there's a lot going on there.
oh yeah,
No question.
And I wanted to jump in just on the 3 points. Basically, this is a carryover from the previous approval of the East Peak 8 Hotel, where they had the same access easement provided. And I think because that was a carryover point, I looked through the previous staff report. We didn't cite the past precedent, but we have a pretty extensive list of past precedent for awarding positive 3 points for public access easements on private property. In this case, that was one of the things that was mentioned just during the last project in terms of the neighbors of that subdivision. Without having public access to the property, they essentially wouldn't have any access to the mountain. So that was one of the most important things to that neighborhood. And that's where the positive 3 points.
I can see that down in the corner. They have a path between the building and the townhouses.
Yeah.
That's very clear. My problem was with the other end. And from what I'm hearing, the town council wanted better access than what is there now. And they're getting 3 points out of precedent to get better access, but in my opinion, not good access. So we can leave it at that.
Yeah, I mean, it's based on past precedent why we're awarding, but I figured since we're trying to explain all the nuances of the internal circulation right now, I'd throw that out.
So if this is the easiest access in and out, why is it a pinch point when any parent who has a kid is going to go in and out of this and it's going to be mobbed? Because you're not going to go all the way down to the other side because then you have to walk all the way across the snow with your 2-year-old or whatever.
Do you
So
mean a pinch point for skiers going through here?
for
is-
anyone getting out of that building that has kids or has to carry stuff.
Do you mean up
and the
here or at
ski
the
lockers
south?
are way on the other side down below. So I'm just,
I just want to clarify, that we surmise that the only people using this cut through to ski would be if you're staying or live in a property in the 4 o'clock or Sawmill Road.
yeah, I'm talking about by the elevator where the BOEC comes out. That's where I'm gonna go if I'm staying there to get out of the building and get in and out of. I'm not gonna go down any of these stairs in my ski
I think
boots.
the point is, it's not necessarily an insignificant number of people.
Yeah, how many people are staying?
I was just trying to clarify the area that she was talking about. Thank you.
Like, that just seems, I'm no expert, but I'd like to see more detail on that, if you could do that for the final. Like, how people are gonna get in and out of that building to the snow and back.
Sure, and it would be synonymous with our access at building 1 and 2 of Grand Colorado, which has a larger number of occupants, and you have two options there. You can come out the patio and go down the stairs where Robbie's is, or you can drop down to the plaza level and come right out of that door, which actually is a smaller walkway right by the first aid space to access the snow. So it was designed based on how we're currently loading and unloading our buildings. And while it may seem like a small access on the scaled plans, we think it's sufficient getting to the snow and providing kind of three different options there, one down the ramp, one directly to the elevator, or one down the snow melted stairs into that patio area. So yes, with two young children, you would definitely go to the elevator out the door and to the snow. Different people would traverse out of that plaza in different ways, I think, without kids.
Graham, I think what might help, is to have Bill do a section through that area up here in the corner, which would show the panel, the elevations, and how they relate to the snow. Pretty easy to do.
Sure.
That would be helpful. I think that it's confusing.
To show the rendering from the snow side?
I don't know if that's in the packet, sir. I think those are just things that we've used, but it wasn't in the packet.
We do have a rendering from the back, but it might be tricky to discern the grade differences. Yeah, it doesn't quite go all the way over to that stair.
Yeah, it cuts off the corner. of the
But there is three separate accesses from that plaza to the mountain. One that has no stairs, one that has 8 stairs, and the one that has the kind of more grand stair. And then the accessible off the elevator. So there's really 4, I guess, from that back area to access the ski hill, not including the pass through from the neighborhood.
Any other questions, Mark?
No. One last comment. At the end of the day, you're the guys that have to sell this. You have the financial risk and interest in this thing. So I'm sure you're going to make it work. But if you could illustrate it for us and make us all feel comfortable with the proposal and moving it forward, that would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Mark. Mike, any questions for?
Hey, Bill, very briefly, the geodesic domes are interesting. Sometimes you see those in cold weather resorts. I agree. I appreciate the experience. I also am quite familiar with seeing kind of vernacular gable structures, sort of garden structures, beer gardens, things like that. Are you locked into the geodesic igloo look?
Yeah, I mean, look, we always take feedback from this group, and as you guys have seen, we've made modifications based on that. Our preference is to kind of create that romantic outdoor kind of igloo experience, you know. And I think the more it starts to feel like a building, the less it breaks down the barrier for indoor outdoor. Is kind of the thoughts we had. So can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Better now. Yeah, so I appreciate that and I respect that. I better understand the design basis. So thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mike. Susan, any questions for the applicant?
No.
All right. Matt?
No questions.
No
Elaine?
further.
And Alan?
Yep. Sarah, could you call up L102? Question, I just have a question about the circulation. So will the patio, the back patio, will that be reserved only for guests and owners and such?
The back patio where the pool deck is, the
Pool
back,
bar and all that?
so part of it will be public where outside the restaurant.
Okay.
If you go to that last page, Sarah, I think it's easier because I can use the color coding. Go down one page. There you go. So Alan, where you see the purple there on the upper part, left part of the screen with the red dot in it, that is the restaurant patio. Obviously, that's a public space.
Okay.
Coming around that patio, as you follow that purple into the hotel lobby, still a public space. You could go to that hotel bar, all of that. As you transition over to where you start seeing the green is where you've gotten into the private space for building occupants, owners, guests, renters. So multi-use going into that patio, but the notion would be general public is invited in to all the way to where you have that fence along the green area.
Sorry, could you go back to 102? This other door, yeah, there you go. So I'm just wondering so the brown, so without going into the pool area, so will the general public, like someone coming from a neighborhood to I guess from the east, be able to, where you have the blue line, will they be able to jump into the patio?
No, there'll be a fence there on top
Okay.
of the wall.
So they have to stay to the left, looking at this off the, if they're
Correct.
heading up
For
to.
two reasons.
Yeah.
A, to stop the skier and beginner intersection with that wall
Yeah.
that drops down into the site. And then B, so that cats can groom along that wall
Okay.
that goes there on.
Got it.
So their experience would be to turn right there at the far end of the site where you see the brown arrow.
Got it. Okay. I'm just wondering, because that could become a more popular route for people to get over to the main base area. But I guess it would be up to Vail Resorts if they want to maintain that as more of a snowpack walking path, not you guys.
Right.
All right. So, I think that's.
And Graham, is there a bridge that connects those townhouses?
Yes, it
That
goes
goes
over
above
that
that
walkway.
path?
Correct, at the third floor of the building.
It's been a few years. I used to, since I worked out of Peak 8, I know where the 83 stair path, and there is or was a bus stop there, mostly for the employees. Is that bus stop still there, or is the bus now stopped? up
Bus
at
stop's
the,
still
gondola?
there, and it's not functioning, picking up there anymore. Just the transit center?
We use the turnaround in
Oh,
front of the ski pool.
Yeah, there you go.
No longer a bus stop at the bottom of those stairs.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. That's all I got. Thanks.
Graham, I think for scale, to show what people are calling a pinch point here on these stairs, that corner, if you could show the width of that stairs,
Sure.
I think that might be helpful and give some
Absolutely.
dimensions in that whole area so that
Sure.
we can understand. Do you know at the bottom of those stairs, the narrow point, you know what the width is there? Or Bill?
They'll drop off, because you're in bad hands with the dimension if they'll dropped off.
I am here.
There it is.
We have modified that stair a few times to try to make it as wide as we can. So I don't remember it exactly, but it's designed, it's based on precedent. Graham actually addressed that really well. We looked at their other projects and the width of their stairs and a number of stairs and kind of modeled it after that. So I don't have that right in front of me. I could probably measure it during the call and let you know real quick, but I don't, I kind of had a handle on it, but we've changed it a few times here. So, but it's a wider than a standard stair, obviously, for the project. So I'll let you know in a second here, maybe.
Okay, thanks,
Is there a
Bill.
standard?
I think having the dimensions on all those stairs would help bring some scale to what we're looking at and clarify some questions. So thank you. I have no further questions for you, Graham or Bill.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll open it up to public comments. And I'd like to First, please ask that we mount and we keep things to 3 minutes per comment. And first off, I'd like to open up to anybody online. Please raise your hand with the icon at the bottom of your screen or press *9 if you're attending the meeting by phone, and then *6 to unmute yourself. You have anybody online?
No one's raising their hand. There are quite a few attendees, so maybe come back in a minute if
Okay.
anybody would raise their hand.
And anybody in the public?
Good evening. My name's Richard Himmelstein. I have a condo at One Ski Hill Place. I'm also on the board at One Ski Hill Place, and I'm representing the One Ski Hill Place tonight. I wanted to just start, and I just want to give a little bit of history, go back to East Peak 8 Hotel. When that was going through the process, the town was really diligent and required the developer to get community feedback, and they had presentations in the public, and they got very good sound feedback, and it really helped the development of the project. And I'm really concerned right now because that hasn't happened with this project. And One Ski Hill actually did an agreement with Mike Dudek and Graham Frank when they were going through their development agreement. And they told us that we would see a copy of their presentation for feedback, and they never reached back out to us. And we missed the first hearing because we weren't even properly noticed. And with that said, for example, we have an agreement with the development that they're going to give a 47-foot setback from One Ski Hill Place. And that view corridor is extremely important to One Ski Hill. And it's also in the master plan. And that was part of the reason why we supported the development, and it's in writing. And this project doesn't meet those standards that we agreed to. And I just think they've gone so fast in what they're doing, and they haven't really worked with us when that's in writing and it's agreement, and we're not going to support it. And I had previously given Mr. Kulik a copy of that agreement. I could send a copy of it to Sarah, but there's supposed to be a 47-foot setback for that view corridor. It's extremely important to us. And again, it's in the master plan. Just some other comments. The dog park, for example. I mean, anyone who's ever seen a dog park knows that it's generally 80 to 100 decibels. Being squeezed between two large structures, those decibels going to go up. It's not going to meet the town noise ordinance. I mean, these are things that if they had met with us, we could have worked with them. And I want to support the project. I just wish they had met with us. I mean, just even talking about the dog park. I mean, if anyone's ever been to Carter Park, they know how much dog feces is out there. If they shovel this, it's going to end up in Cucumber Creek. I mean, there's so many things that have not been addressed in here. And I don't want to take all your time tonight, but I would love to meet with the developers and work with them. And I want to support the development, but this project as it stands, we can't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Himmelstein. Any other comments?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Jim Cogan. I'm also an owner at One Ski Hill Place. I'm a dog owner and I'm a dog person. And I just wanted to say that because I am also strongly opposed to the commercial kennel being basically between the buildings. You know, it's the owners of One Ski Hill bought our condos to enjoy everything Breckenridge has to offer. Our guests come here from all over the world and pay top dollar, again, to enjoy everything Breckenridge has to offer: the mountains, the fresh air, not the dog feces smell, and not the barking, which you're going to have with the dog kennel. I have a personal experience. Our dog used to be kenneled in a residential area. The lady used to run a kennel, and when it got to a certain size, she was asked to move to business out of the residential area, you know, to an open, kind of more open area, commercial area. So I think there's a place for kennels. I don't think this is it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Stape. I also just want to mimic that I think there does need to be some more community input into this type of project, seeing this over the last 15 years as a avid skier and somebody that loves the resorts and uses them and also has small children. I think what we've seen is that some of these resorts are not as accessible. That's why we're asking for better instruction on how the circulation is going to work within this resort, is because as a local, we would also like to use these amenities as well. And from my experience, what we've seen is bathrooms being placed 2 floors down, or we've seen these stairs and their access of, 45 stairs, what I've counted over on Peak 7, which is almost unattainable, especially when we have our gondola shut down and we have to take the buses and then we have to walk these long staircases just to get to our ski resort. And if you can imagine having a small toddler, that's just not happening. And so this is an opportunity, I feel like, to be able to bring in more of the public, to be able to use these resources. And I think that the circulation needs to be discussed in a community format further. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jane Hamilton. I am a close neighbor in the 4 O'Clock Run subdivision behind the townhomes that we didn't talk about this evening. That's in phase 3. My question is probably for Graham. I just wanted to see if you could expound on the during construction, the 5 to 6 years that you will be under construction. How do you want those 4 O'Clock Run subdivision people to get in and out? I know is there a plan for that? Does that make sense? My question. I'm just wondering about the future, because we won't be able to get in and out the way that we can. There is a 10-foot pedestrian easement that is in 4 O'Clock that was designed, I believe, so that all of the neighbors, all of the homes in 4 O'Clock Run subdivision have access winter and summer all year round to get to the ski area, to get to the mountain. I was just wondering how that's going to work and with the phases.
That, Graham?
Question. Before you start, I wanted to say thank you for being good about giving us the access.
Sure.
The
And
Pinch
Graham,
Point.
just to be clear, on a previous meeting, I raised that very issue. You're going to be under construction for 5 years. And I think you need to make a positive identification for those people as to what it is you're going to provide to them in terms of ski access, because I think her concern is very valid.
Right. And during construction, it will be a large hole that you cannot traverse. But during that same construction, you'll be able to go down to that sidewalk that is on Ski Hill Road. And in the first phase, we deliver that staircase up to the snow. And once we get the site built out is when the snow access comes back, because we have to actually excavate, build the building, and then would provide the access. But during construction, there is no way to traverse a construction site safely on skis until that site is filled back in.
I don't
and
think
delivered.
anybody's asking for that. I think that perhaps what they would like to have is an access for skis above the site, right there at the top of Trigby's. And if they've got to walk up the hill a little bit, put on their skis and go across your site, and you have proper construction fencing, it shouldn't be an issue.
If
I
we
wrong?
could provide safe access across, right, with a large hole there and snow conditions, all of those things, I don't think we can commit to that standing here, Mark, with the changing nature of that site, construction, trees, all of those things. There is no way that we could say a hard, fast access, but that access will be provided down to the sidewalk.
Well, Graham, I hear you,
round it
but
up.
I come from the city. They dig huge holes 6 feet in the ground. And meanwhile, people walk up and down the streets of Washington, DC every day to go to their offices or whatever. And it's not an issue. And I think it's
We'd be
something,
providing that same access around the site, Mark, that you're talking about in Washington, DC, down to the sidewalk, up the public right of way, safe from construction,
Right.
and up the staircase. That would be provided up and around the top through a natural environment and trees and a hole and construction setback. No, we cannot commit to that here. That is nowhere near what is provided in the city. And I appreciate the comment, but the safe place to go would be down the ski easement to the sidewalk around the site and either up the escalator that is provided with the new transit center or the staircase that'll be built in the first phase.
I think that's an inappropriate thing for you to ask the public to do. These people have had access for years and years and years out the end of 4 o'clock run onto the ski street, and you're going to make them walk down to Ski Hill Road around your building.
The 4 o'clock run access is never going away, Mark. I did not say that. You asked me above the townhomes in the trees that is not at 4 o'clock. If people want to go on up to the road, walk out to the end of the road and onto the ski, that will never be affected.
Mark, what you
Chair,
asked about, it does exist.
Chair, I'm gonna,
The carpets, there's a way that you can get it.
Okay, well, that's what I'm asking.
excuse me, Alan, Mark, Chair, I'm gonna suggest this is public comment period now. This is not the time to have debate between the applicant and the planning commission. So we need to just go back to Jane's comments and anyone else that wants to make public comment at this point.
Sufficiently answer your questions to Graham?
That does answer my question. However, I just want to point out too, that we know that there is that easement that comes from the 10-foot pedestrian easement that goes behind those 3 properties that abut the development site. Yes, thank you for that little pointer. You can access that from the road above, which is 4 o'clock Run Road. It could probably be even improved during this time of construction so that people, because right now, those 3 home sites that are behind there, where the pointer is, there's at least 40 people daily that's just 3 home sites that use that. So that 10-foot pedestrian easement is there. It's platted. So if you can make a way that you can come in from 4 o'clock Run Road, some people will have to walk up. Yep, that's life. That's how they're going to have to do it. But it is there. So you should be able to access it during construction. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Do we have anybody online?
No hands are raised.
We'll close the public hearing and move to planning commissioner comments. And at the same time, we can answer the questions. Mike, would you like to start us off?
Sure. Number one, the dome materiality. I think Bill did a nice job trying to explain the basis of design in a winter experience. I encourage them to do it in quality materials. Number two, landscaping 2 points, yes. Number 3, fence enclosure, yes. Updated preliminary point analysis, yes. Ready for final hearing, yes. Additional, this is a handsome design. I compliment Graham and Bill and BGB on this. It's a good looking building. And I believe it's very compliant. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Mark.
With regards to the questions, does the commission have any concerns regarding the materiality of the majority glass amenity structures? For the small amount that I am aware of, I have no concerns at this time. Does the commission agree with staff recommended 2 points for landscaping? Yes, I do. Does the commission agree with the approval of the variance that would allow commercial kennel fence enclosure? I do agree with that variance, which doesn't really speak to the issue of whether or not there's going to be a kennel. Number 4, does the commission agree with the staff preliminary point analysis? I don't. Number 5, does the commission agree that the project's ready for final hearing. I think we still have some questions, and assuming that those questions and the material board can be addressed at the final hearing, I think that we're probably ready for that. And I have no other comments.
Thank you, Mike.
Elaborate on the points that you don't agree with. Thank you.
Okay, our point system is intended to reward policies and actions that we would like to encourage, and also to penalize penalties and actions that we don't and would like to discourage. I don't give my dog a biscuit every time he does something I don't like, nor do I discipline him every time he doesn't, and he acts like a dog. I don't think this commission should be awarding positive points for things that applicants are going to do anyway in the course of the project. And I circle around to the Davis Advantage Pro system. I think that's a great system. I think that it is advantageous to the program, but the developer's going to do it anyway because he's going to save money. So why are we giving him points to do that? And it makes no sense to me for this issue or the EV charger issues that we do in the home to give points away for things that people are going to do anyway. And that's where I am with the points.
Could you provide your specifically which points do you not agree with?
I don't agree with the 4 points for the Davis Advantage Pro system. I agree they should put it in, but they're going to do it anyway. So why are we going to give them 4 points for it? I mean, economically, it's not the thing to do to say, oh, well, I don't get the points, so I'm not going to put it in. And they're going to put it in when they're building the building because that's the least expensive time to put it in. So that's my position. Why should we give them 4 points for that?
Okay. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
Susan.
Thanks, Ethan. I have concerns about the geodesic domes. I understand, I appreciate, Chris, that you explained that there was a protrusion from one ski hill place that is a glass structure, but I think that with all of our emphasis on natural materials, and I understand that these are not as prominent as some could be, that we're creating a precedent for glass structures that I think could really become an issue in future projects. And so I do not favor it. As far as the landscaping, I agree. As far as the variance for the pet fence enclosure, I certainly, understand that a commercial facility needs a larger space. Although I'm mindful of some of the comments that we've gotten regarding noise and so forth. And if there's another way to do it, I would be interested in hearing about it. As far as the updated preliminary point analysis, I'm okay. I do agree that the project is ready for a final hearing, and I have no additional comments.
Thank you, Susan. Matt.
Regarding the glass structures, I have no problems with. The landscaping, I do not agree on the positive 2 points, simply because I think the overall project is nicely landscaped, but the artificial turf in the dog run kind of negates any positive landscaping perceptions in my mind. So I think that brings it down a level of from like a nicely landscaped spot to having this big fluorescent green spot. That's the dog run. So I don't necessarily agree with the 2 points on that. Kind of that rolls into the structure being 5 times the allowable size for the the kennel or the dog park, the fence height, I don't have an issue with. So, the preliminary point analysis, I'm going to negate the 2 points, positive points for the landscaping because of the artificial turf and the dog park. And I'm going to agree with Mark on the positive 4 points with the snow melt system. I think it's easy to mask cost savings with environmentally friendly initiatives. And I think it's great to do so, but to kind of hide behind the wall of being green or whatever to save money is somewhat disingenuous. Final hearing, sure. And I don't have any other comments.
Thank you, man. Elaine?
Okay, really impressive project. A lot going on. I'll start with the geodesic domes. I'm a kid of the 60s, love geodesic dome homes from my youth. I think they're very mountainy, so I also think it adds kind of an artistic flair to the whole design. So I'm fully in favor of them. For the landscaping, I'm totally fine with the 2 points also. It seems in line with the other properties that we've given even more points to in the past. Regarding the kennel, after hearing the comments of the neighbors, I guess I'm curious to see what you're going to do for noise control, because I'm sure your guests won't like that too. But I am in favor of the adding 6 inches to the fence height for that. I agree with all the point system. I even agree with the 4 points for the heated on-off control system. And I agree to that because I think having snow melt on a property like this is where we should have lots of snow melt, because you have hundreds of people going in and out of that building. And I just think like there's a lot to shovel on that place already. So at least it's being used to maybe offset the negative points for snow melt. For final hearing, I think we're close. I do want to see more access details on how people are going to get in and out, and maybe see like how tall the stairs are in that wall. Just kind of a more visual would be helpful. And maybe if you guys have some more information on your dog park, and maybe reach out to your neighbors a little bit. It's my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine. Alan?
Thank you. First comment, just for the people who made public comment. I always say this and I'll say it again. We're judges and we're limited by the development code and by the master development agreement between the applicant and the town council. So I can empathize with a lot of your comments, but I think they might be better placed with town council. There's some where we can address some of your concerns. Also, to address some of my fellow commissioner concerns and the 83-step public access, having skied there and been there, I think that access is only going to be used by people going down, not up, particularly with no bus stop there.
Particularly if they make the up trip one time.
Yes, yeah. I mean, people are going to get off the bus at the transit center and where the gondola is. So I'm less concerned about that. As for the glass domes, my only comment is they're going to be really hot in the summer. So I think they're going to need to be air conditioned in the summer. I do agree that something like a gondola-like structure might be just as interesting, but otherwise they're not going to be, it is part of the private property enclosed, so I have no concerns about that. I agree with the 2 points for the landscaping. It'll enhance the area. I agree with the fence size for the kennel, but I would ask the applicant to maybe consider some of the concerns of your neighbors. considering they weren't expecting a building. I could see from their perspective, having the kennel there as well as kind of, for lack of a better term that I can think of, rubbing their nose in it. So maybe it could be moved to the roadside of the building or something, but I would just ask the applicant to consider the concerns of your neighbors. As for the point analysis, I do agree. I think Elaine made a good point. And Mark had made a point in the previous meeting that we shouldn't be so limiting in public areas on the amount of snow melt. I also think that this particular issue, and we've had this discussion before, I think you can only get 4 points. You can't get 2 points. 4 is a lot, considering we're giving 4 points for all of the BOEC stuff that you're doing. I'd probably be more amenable to maybe 2 points for that system. So it's something for us to consider as a planning commission to add some more increments to that part of the point system. And I think we're close to, yeah, I would consider a final hearing. Thanks for listening to all my comments.
Thank you, Alan. I would like to reiterate what Alan has said about the dog run area. I think the public comment made some very good points, both in the noise and potential smell. It's a very tight area in there. So, and also reiterate that we're here as judging on the code and can't really address it directly. That said, as far as the materiality of the glass domes, I think we've already got a precedent in One Ski Hill Place right next door where there's a fairly large glass structure facing the ski area, but I'm there all the time and I certainly have noticed it many times. So I don't really have a problem with the materiality of the geodesic domes. So I'm fine with that. I'm also okay with the 2 points for landscaping, and with the commercial kennel fence enclosure, both the fence and the size. But then reiterating the public comment on that, and Graham, however you guys choose to address that. I also would like to comment on the 4 points for the weather monitoring system. And I tend to agree with Mark that it's something that you guys are going to put in anyway. And correct me if I'm wrong, it seems that that's a somewhat untested system. Has it been around a long time, Graham?
We've been using it.
Okay. Okay, all right. I'm going to go ahead and agree with the point analysis. I just wanted to bring that up. So I think that I agree with the recommended preliminary point analysis, and we are ready for final hearing with the pre-mentioned things. And I have no further comments. And I thank you all for the comments and the presentation. Thank you. Mark, can we go to the town council update?
Yes, we can. Okay, well, this will be fairly brief. I know Chris is going to talk a little bit about some other council things in a minute. But at the meeting last week, the main things, one, there was the State of the Open Space Report. It's an annual report that the council gets from Open Space Division. And once again, amazing work done on our trail systems, as well as acquisitions of properties. I think it was 75 or 100 acres we acquired last year. We may, if we've got a slower agenda here in the next several months, bring Duke in to give you guys that State of the Open Space Report. I think you got it a year or two ago, and it's interesting and certainly ties in with some of the work we do here with the Planning Commission. Other than that, pretty slow agenda. We did have a work session on the netting out at the golf course, which you guys saw several meetings ago. The proposal has changed a little bit. Council wanted to talk about it. If you recall, there was netting at the far end of the driving range and then proposed to the east next to the Elk #1. And that netting next to Elk #1 is being proposed to be taken out now, but they are talking about replacing that netting on the west side. There's actually some existing netting on the west side that's been there for some time. I don't need to really go into that in any more detail. The council asks that we bring this, before they have their hearing, bring this back to the planning commission. So it's something that Ellie will be bringing to you at your next meeting. So just be aware that that's coming, and that'll be at the next meeting.
The problem is there's more golfers on the planning commission than there are on the town council.
Yeah. Okay, and then before I turn it over to Chris, I just want to recognize Chris for all his. Chris, has it been 18 years with the town now? Working, and then he served in your capacity for several years as planning commissioner prior to that, while he was going to getting his master's in planning down in Denver. But having said all that, it's been great having him work with me and the rest of the crew for a long period of time now. And I'm pleased to announce that he has now been appointed our new Assistant Director of Community Development. So anyway, yeah, that's exciting news. And with that, I'll pass it over to Chris because he just wanted to touch on a couple of things regarding a couple issues that came up earlier today.
Right. Well, thanks everyone. I appreciate the support, and it's been great working with you guys and to continue working with you. I felt like it was probably worth just touching base after the public comment, earlier in the meeting regarding some of the MPP issues, and just to kind of keep you guys up to speed with what's going on with that. And, I think in the town council updates, I'd previously mentioned that the council has looked at it during a couple of work sessions, made some very preliminary recommendations and maybe some changing some design features, but they really want to make sure that there's ample time for the design, the construction community to weigh in, as well as the public. And so right now this week, we're hosting our first open house, and that's with the design and construction professionals. And so we have a meeting at noon. Mike is actually, I believe, going to attend on behalf tomorrow. Yeah, I think I'm off a day by missing work, but yeah, I'll be
Not sure. Hang on.
Thursday.
Thursday.
You got me worried there for a second today.
Thursday, what time? It's Thursday.
It's Thursday at noon.
6th. Pardon?
So we reached out to, most of the construction and architecture firms. And that, I think we have pretty good representation from at least someone from almost all the firms that typically we do, we see the bulk of business, but really they kind of go over it, kind of go over where, what concerns the council had and what kind of solutions they think they're recommending at this point, but really get feedback and make sure that there isn't any fatal errors at this point, and get that feedback from, really the people that are, our design professionals and the ones that are actually building these structures every day. From then, we'll probably bring it to the general public and then bring it to the planning commission for a work session. And then once we get the input through those channels, we'll come back to the council with some formal recommendations. But I think where we started with this, there's all kinds of different options thrown out, and I think the individual that spoke tonight probably isn't aware of like the latest proposals, because we're really kind of we're proposing some increased setbacks and maybe some roof design issues are probably the most substantial items. A lot of the energy things they thought were best left handled by, through the process we've been using now for almost 20 years of our regular code updates and some of the other items, and then also working with the county on, diversion of waste materials, since it's so critical to really be aligned with the landfill on those types of issues. But I think one of the key takeaways at this point is right now the council did not recommend any further density reductions on site, which I think is probably what a lot of the property owners are probably most fearful would be the case. But are looking at other things that definitely influence the design and character and the perception of how big a home is. So that's kind of where we are. But yeah, excited to meet with the designers and builders on Thursday.
That being said, is it just Weisshorn, like the commenter kind of referenced, or is it across the board all of?
No, it's the going back a little bit further, which is actually a good point, and thanks for bringing that up. The neighborhood preservation policies that's kind of known is controlled really like home size within, I want to say 16 neighborhoods that that do not have building or disturbance envelopes. So it's not across all single family homes, but it was in neighborhoods where really was only dictated by setbacks only. And so it is much larger than the Weisshorn, but I think the Weisshorn admittedly is what's drawn the attention as of recent, because when we did some preliminary studies, pretty much all the homes that were either scrapes or very large additions were almost exclusively occurring in the Weisshorn versus the other neighborhoods that are included under the NPP policy. So we've used, for example, we've used the Weisshorn and Goldflake, which is a lot of people kind of lump into the as the same neighborhood, for examples, to kind of narrow the scope a little bit and make it I guess a little bit more understandable, but it is broader than the Weisshorn. So it's a great question.
So probably too, as a general rule of thumb, pretty much if the subdivision occurred before around the year 2000, it didn't have disturbance and building envelopes, and therefore would be subject to this policy. All the newer subdivisions, most of the later phases of Highlands and other new subdivisions all have these disturbance envelopes and building envelopes. So
Yeah, there's a couple, like using the Highlands as an example, there's a couple early filings where the minority of lots did not have envelopes. So there might, say in Highlands 1 and 2, there might be 4 or 5 that did not. Those are subject to the MPP, but the rest of the lots that have envelopes are not subject to it.
So to sum it up, the areas of concern would be all those areas that don't have building envelopes. Any place that has building envelopes is kind of off the table with this.
Yeah, I should say with the exception, there's a couple of things going back to the a couple policies that they wanted to reduce or eliminate points, such as the EV points for single family homes and landscaping. That I believe would be across the board for all single family homes, whether it has an envelope or not. So there's a little bit of cross pollination, if you will, between the two different types of neighborhoods for those types of policies. But I just wanted to keep you guys, because I think it's really important that the council, they want to make sure that the community is well informed, has opportunity for public input. And also we think that, just kind of keeping the planning commission, since you'll ultimately have input too, it's important to keep you guys updated on where we are at in the process, even knowing that you'll eventually get the way in as well.
great. And then the only other thing I wanted to say was last call, if anyone's interested in national EPA, I think Mike's the only one I've heard from so far. But if any of the rest of you are interested, we can get you set up for that. So just let us know what we need to hear this week.
Anything else? Okay.
Mark, just out of curiosity, did the public comments we got today, were they expressed during the discussions of the town council meetings when they were negotiating the new master plan, the revised master plan?
Not the comments that, as I recall, that Mr. Himmelstein.
Or
was
just the
making.
one, just the one Ski Hill Place residents? I mean, there's plenty of notice, there's in the paper all the time that they're revising the plan.
Yeah, there was little to no comment from One Skill Place, as I recall. Maybe you have.
There's a little bit, I mean, Mr. Himmelstein is a fairly regular commenter, and so he's been involved, I think, throughout really anything in that area, he's generally very involved with. And I think to a certain extent, he works with other members of One Skill Place, but this is definitely a larger number of people than what we've had.
I feel like a broken record saying all the time is like, it's kind of like, the cat's out of the bag by the time it gets to us. And I feel like maybe there's a better way to educate people that, when a master, the development agreement is being negotiated, that's the time to really raise some comments with town council, not with us.
Yeah, I think between One Skill Place, the 4 o'clock subdivision, and then some residents in Woods Drive, there may have been about 6 or 7 residents at one meeting or another, maybe had a comment or a letter. But a lot of them were kind of one-off types of things. Jane Hamilton, who was here tonight, former planning commissioner, I think understands the process. She's generally been pretty active all the way through, even going back to the previous one. But I think from the previous applications, a lot of times it comes down to the very end before they people decide to come out and speak their piece.
Can you talk about this 47-foot view corridor setback? Couldn't find that in.
We probably shouldn't be getting into a bunch of discussion right now about the application now that we've closed that hearing. So
I just don't know where that is.
if you want to contact us individually before the next hearing, we'd be glad, maybe give Sarah a call. We'd be glad to work with you on that. Okay.
Yep. Other comments? Close the meeting, Plan Commission meeting of March 4th, 2025. Thanks, Mike.